working on the date for that. We're going to be doing that over at Tyrone's place. And so we're just going to be working on the date for that. We're going to be doing that over at Tyrone's place. And so we've confirmed that. We have a church barbecue coming up and some other things. So summer is good. Enjoy summer, but we are also going to enjoy some special summer activities together. And so you will get the outline with the dates and everything for that next Sunday morning. We'll make that available to everyone. And so, again, thank you for coming this morning and being with us as we worship together. This is the last Sunday in our series on the Sermon on the Mount. And so next Sunday, I have something special I'll be sharing in the context of, we know that next Saturday is actually our National Day for Indigenous Peoples. And so this is something that God has put on my heart. And so I'll be sharing something with you on Sunday about our call to serve, to love, and to bring reconciliation. Reconciliation. Teaching and doesn't obey it is foolish. Like a person who builds winds beat against that house, it will collapse with a mighty crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, for he taught with real authority, quite unlike their teachers of religious law. Before I get into all the details of that, one of the things that struck me is that, there are some assumptions in this simple statement about building your house on the rock. And it's a great image. But we also have to remember that when they were talking about houses, they were talking about stone houses. They weren't talking about stick houses. So we have here in Canada stick houses, right? And so the building process was a lot different in the Middle East in Jesus' day. In fact, the word that is translated carpenter to describe Jesus is also the same word for a stonemason. And so he wasn't chopping pieces of lumber and building stick houses like we have here. They were building actual stone homes. And so that construction being a little bit different, we put this into our context. We have I am not going to be nailing in thousands of nails and feeling my arm die on me. But, we're used to having a basement. But you go down to the southern USA, no one has a basement. Like, that's just an unheard of thing. The word is almost meaningless to them, And when you look at it and say, well, they're actually building their houses on the sand because that's all they got in some of those places. And so they have building techniques that go for that. But if you went to Newfoundland, and, which is affectionately called the Rock, they build houses on the rock. But if you went to Newfoundland, and so there's not likely to be a basement there. And the question is not going to be, just are the floods going to blow it or wash it away? It's more likely, are the winds going to blow it away? And so how do you affix your house to a rock so that it doesn't move? And so there are great stories of in Newfoundland when they actually had to move entire villages and they put houses on skids and dragged it across the ice to set it up somewhere else where they could put it on a rock and fix it. And so we have this particular image that Jesus gives to us, but we have to remember that, each area has its own building wisdom, but that wisdom needs to be applied, whatever that is. We lived in Germany for 8 years, and when they build a house there, they don't build stick houses. Okay, they are, cement walls, building a house, they have cranes that help set up one individual house when they build stick houses. They are, have set up houses for 500 years. They're not building a house for 50 years. And, these are some of the differences. We need to be able to use our wisdom. So we're going to get back to that. But I thought just that image we have of the wise person building their house on a rock, well, that's not always physically how it works in every part of the world. But there is still the wisdom on how to build a house so that it doesn't get blown away, washed away, or collapse in an earthquake or whatever our particular region faces. And so we have this text. But Jesus says, anyone who listens to my teaching. Well, what teaching? Well, I could give you a test today and find out who's been paying attention on Sunday mornings to the teaching and see if we all pass. And it's not like if you pass, you go to heaven, and if you don't, you don't. No, that doesn't work that way. But this is at the end of his sermon. At the end of his sermon, remember at the beginning when it says, happy is the person who. And so we were reminded that we live in a consumer-based society. Obviously, in a capitalistic society, you need to sell things in order to keep the money flowing around. So you make something so you can sell something, people buy the something, and then everybody spends money at the grocery store and at the restaurant and at the gas pumps and on it goes. But with that consumer-based society, there is this little thing that they have to do to us. And that is, they have to make us unhappy about what we have. So that we will find the answer to happiness, which is what? Buy what they want to sell us. And that if you buy this car or this house or this cell phone or wear these clothes or whatever it is, it will somehow produce this magic thing called happiness. And so we have, even in the context of the American Constitution and this national dream, that people can do what? In the pursuit of happiness. And so they are pursuing happiness like it's a thing that you can get. Like you can find it and grab it and hold on to it, or you can buy it and have it and enjoy it. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And that you can have all of those wonderful things, it doesn't make you happy. For some reason on my Facebook feed the other day was I think it was the 5 richest Canadian women. $1 million jet and all the rest of that. Does that produce happiness? Or is that just rest of happy rest of that. Now, I'm not condemning them, by the way, because if you have $1 billion or more of net value, owning a house that's worth $20 million is nothing. Because all of us, if you own a house, you know that the value of your house is many times more than the value of your salary, and that your net worth is probably less than the value of your house because you have a mortgage, right? So we go through this kind of thing, and we can be maxed out. So somebody who's worth billions and has a $10 or $20 million house, that's pocket change, okay? I know it's hard for us to picture that because, may God smite with a little bit of pocket change, and in the words of Reb Tevye, may I never recover. But in all of that, it doesn't make happiness. And so we read this sermon and we hear the voice of Jesus, and he tells us, those who are truly happy, the poor in spirit, those who mourn, the meek, those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, those who are merciful, those who are utterly sincere, and those who make peace in our world. You want to be happy, don't seek happiness. Live this way, and the happiness will be a product. It's like if you think, I'll be happy when I get married. If there are any single people out there thinking that, let me disabuse you of that thought really quickly. Okay? I get a lot of response here. That means you all know what I'm talking about. Does that mean that married people are unhappy? No, it doesn't. But it does mean that married people have learned the lesson that it's not the marriage that makes you happy. The relationship that you have in the marriage, which can be very frustrating, can also be very happiness is all the stuff that comes with it. And so if we are living this way, if we are like these people that Jesus said, these are the kind of people that Jesus wants to hang out with. These are the kind of people that he wants as citizens of his kingdom. And that a Christian is not the one who is the winner, the champion. Like it's great to be a champion. If you're a champion at sports or whatever it is, good. God bless you. When I play sports, I play to win. I don't play to lose. That doesn't mean I win. Okay? Especially with golf, that doesn't mean I win. Yet, winning is not everything. And sometimes we turn this whole thing into, we get the testimony of the winners. And, oh, wow, so-and-so won a gold medal at the Olympics, and they're going to tell you about Jesus. Okay, that's fine. I thank God for that. But at the same time, if you won a gold medal at the Olympics, that means that everybody else that was in your competition in the Olympics did not win a gold medal. They went home with less than gold or less than any medals. But that's not the end of the story, because you're already the elite of the elite of the elite who went to the Olympics. What about all the rest of the people who've been competing all of their lives and never even made it to the Olympic team? And then all the rest of us who, if we tried to compete, we'd have a heart attack and it would be over very, very quickly. So, like if being the winner is what you need to be a Christian, and somehow that successful is the kind of person that we're looking for, and the rest of us are what? We're a bunch of losers. No. This is attainable by every person on the planet. We can all be those things, that kind of person. And if we do that, then the happiness will come as a consequence and not as a goal. Next thing we learned is that we are the representatives of Christ in this world. Jesus, who is no longer physically on this planet, although he had been, but he is no longer here physically, he left us to be him here. so we are salt and light. And we saw that week what that means. And we're going to have a lovely potluck meal. And you know that whoever prepared the dishes that we have, I'm sure they used seasoning. Okay? And we will enjoy it and we'll say it's tasty. Now, it is Father's Day. I have a confession to make with you. This evening, I'm going to have a barbecue. A friend of ours gave us a very lovely gift certificate at the LeMay's Meat Place in Welland, and we are having steak. And the key to a good barbecue is to start with good food. If you have good food, then you have a chance of having a really good barbecue. And so I have to confess, I bought the best steaks they had. And so now if it fails, it's all on me, the barbecuer. But I'll be using some spices, and I have my own marinade secret mix that we guys all have our own way of doing things. And there's going to be a few of us there, and we're going to have T-bones this evening. And so I know, talking about food Sunday morning, isn't that cruel and inhumane punishment? But the good news is there is food. After the service, you don't have to go out to the restaurant. We can fellowship together and eat together, and we'll be doing that. But we know that the salt makes the food taste good with the other herbs and spices that we have with that. In all of this, Jesus says that we are the salt and the light. We are not the light of the world so that we can show our neighbor how terrible they are. God hasn't given me a light so that I can go around to Jesus and light the path for them on that way so they can find it without tripping and falling along the way. It is not for me to judge, but it is for me to open the way to them. And even as Christina shared that testimony of the young girl who, in her heart, she wants to serve God, but, you know, am I good enough? Well, we've all had that thought. And the answer is, of course not. None of us are good enough. But we come to Him because He is good. It's that story reminds me of the picture of the woman who hires somebody to come and help clean the house. And she's getting tired getting the house ready for the person to come and clean the house. All right? You women all understood what that meant, right? We're like that with Jesus. We try to do His work for Him so that somehow we are presentable to Him. And guess what? You can't. We come to Him as we are, weak and sinful and broken and sick and whatever else it is that we are carrying. We bring that to Him, not because it's good to be that, but that's because that's the way we are, and we come to Him that way so that He can do His miraculous work in our lives. And so I want to remind us as a church that this church in the community is called to be the salt and light of the community. We are not the salt that you stick in the wound to make somebody scream with pain. We are the salt that brings flavor to food. We are the light that shows the way, and God has called us to do that. Well, as part of this sermon, Jesus reminds us that it's not keeping the 613 commandments that we are somehow going to be able to achieve the goals that have been set before us. He talks about entering the kingdom of heaven, and the kingdom of heaven is not synonymous with going to heaven. We here today, not because of this place, but because of our relationship with Jesus and because of His calling on our lives to follow Him, as followers of Jesus, we are citizens of the heavenly kingdom. And that heavenly kingdom has a constitution and bylaws, and we read them as part of the Sermon on the Mount. It has a way of doing things and a way of not doing things. And it has a relationship that citizenship brings and responsibilities with it, as well as the privileges that come from that. And so he's telling us that our righteousness better be better than that of the Pharisees, who are trying to maintain all of the little parts of the law, but they miss the big picture. And unfortunately, at times in the church, we can be exactly like that. We are so fixated on certain aspects of religious life and following rules, whatever they are, that we miss the big things. And Jesus said, that's not good enough. They have neglected the more important matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. Aren't those amazing things? It's not like righteousness and be better than everybody else, but it's justice, mercy, and faithfulness. He wants to know, he wants to see that we keep walking in the same direction. He's set a path before us. And so, do we stray from the path? Well, sometimes we do. But then we get back on the path and we get back on track and we head in that direction. And it is a long, long journey. And so, I had the privilege of knowing personally, and I have memories, of 8 of my 10 great-grandparents. And it was a great-grandfather who talked to me about the baptism in the Spirit. It was a great-grandmother who taught me that, we had this comment earlier today that Gwen made about Peggy being, you have a child that's 62. They're still your baby. And my great-grandmother at her 75th wedding anniversary, when lived through a couple of world wars, lived through all kinds of real great disasters, and when asked, she said the hardest thing for her was living longer than her kids. Because at 90 some odd, there were children that could have been dying of old age, and so she was outliving, because they're still the babies. They're still her babies. And so we face a number of these challenges in our lives, and it's a long journey, and Jesus is looking for us to faithfully keep in that direction and show mercy and bring justice to those who need it. Don't get the picture wrong. The justice in our society is, how do you punish the wicked? But actually, it is, in a biblical context, is how do you protect the victims? How do you bring justice to the victim who has been stolen from or abused or beaten or whatever? Somebody steals their car, somebody moves the marker stones on their property lines, and whatever it is, you bring justice. Yes, that's going to mean something for the perpetrator, but its focus is, first of all, care for those who need it. And so we need to be not like the Pharisees looking for people who break the law, but we need to be those looking for people who break the law, but we need to be those who show justice, mercy, and faithfulness in our lives to Jesus. This sermon has, not mine, his sermon, has reminded us that Jesus does not set the bar low. Okay? Although we come to him as we are, broken, sinful, sick, whatever, he's not going to leave us there, and he's not going to set the bar so low that you can jump over it without having to do anything. He is going to stretch you. And so he talks about those who do bad things to us. And how do we respond to them? And so he tells us that he wants us as believers, that if someone has something against us, and we come to this place to worship, he reminds us that it's not all about you. It's easy for me to come into a worship service and say, Lord, I really need your blessing today. And then leave feeling disappointed that I didn't get a blessing. And God is saying, I've been talking to you about you being a blessing to someone else. Someone came today in church and needed a blessing that you can give them, and you didn't do it. Because we're focused on what I get out of it. Well, Jesus said, when you come to worship, stop for a moment. And if someone has something against you, notice, he didn't say if you have something against someone else. If that's the case, there's a deeper problem that needs to be dealt with. But if someone has something against you, then it's time for you to take that lead, go to that person and say, brother, sister, we need to somehow resolve this problem. And resolve it. Then come with your offering. There are too many times we can pray for revival and we can hope for good things in our church and on and go, but ignore the reality of things that we know need to be fixed, and we need to take the step to do that in our relationships. If everybody in the church cared enough about the other people in church that if someone has something against you, you know, you've been parking in their parking spot. You've been sitting in their church pew spot. You've been whatever, okay? And, those sound funny. But the reality is that sometimes a visitor can come into church and they sit there in a spot and somebody comes and goes, yeah. That's kind of my spot. Sorry. That may be the last time you'll ever see them in church. You know? So we need to be looking at it from the perspective of others and how we can build those relationships. So Jesus reminds us that worship is not just an individual act. It's something that we do together. And that does mean at times dealing with the problems that we have to face. He also talked about how as Christians we shouldn't be trying to somehow make ourselves look really great by promising things that we can't deliver or swearing by things that are much greater than us. You know, if I'm telling a lie, may God smite me. You know, that kind of statement and hoping that there's no lightning that day, you know, because some days there might be. But the reality is to swear by heaven or church or the Bible or, you know, whatever is not our place. He wants us just to be able to say, if somebody asks you and you say yes, that should be good enough. You know, I know that in the business world, you better have a contract to back everything up, okay? Because in the business world, I don't care if they're Christians or not. And so I've been ripped off in the business world because of, okay? So we got some gardening to do. I made some raised gardens for my wife so she can do gardening without having to bend over to the ground. It's kind of now her level, but now I had to put soil in that, you know. So we all kind of got together, and you get a discount if you buy more than one. And so we shared the discount. And so I told my neighbor, you know, like, tell me how much, and I'll pay you my part for it. Now, he went out and he bought it on his credit card because he believed that I would pay him for my part. And I did. In fact, he made a math mistake, And I told him, you're cheating yourself, and I put the correct amount there. And then he laughed and he said, it doesn't really matter. Why? He says, because my wife is getting the money and not me, and therefore I'll never see it, whether it was short a couple bucks or whatever. And she confirmed that later on in the week. But when your neighbor asks you a question, a yes or a no should be enough. If it's not enough, then there's a problem. And we need to be searching our hearts and looking at how we live, that our neighbors can or cannot trust us. And so Jesus is saying, do we keep our word? Do our neighbors and co-workers trust us when we say we're going to do something? Do we actually do it? Well then, if this wasn't hard enough, I told you Jesus sets the bar high. Well, he sets it really high when he says that you need to forgive your enemy. It's not enough to say, who is my neighbor? And we all know the great story of the Good Samaritan, who was the neighbor to the guy who got robbed and beaten up and left beside the road to die. And it was the Samaritan, the half-Jew, the religious heretic, the guy that was despised, who actually then showed himself to be the neighbor of that guy. And that was hard enough because there was a priest and there was a Levite that walked by, and they were busy serving God. They didn't have time to care for this guy. Obviously, that's a problem. And so if our spirituality means that, we can't care for someone like that, we have a problem. Now, you probably notice I like church to start at 10:30. Not 10:35, not 10:31. I've told Pastor Barbara that, and she's opening the service. I really appreciate that. 10:30, she's up here, and she's opening the service. But if one day she couldn't be here at 10:30 because she was driving and noticed somebody with a flat tire that needed help, and she stopped and helped them along the side of the road, that would be a good thing and not a bad thing. It would be a better thing if she texts me and says, I can't be there at 10:30 because I'm helping somebody on the side of the road. Pastor, can you do it? And I would be glad to do that. But the reality is that that's what neighbors do, right? And so that's more important than maintaining pastor's schedule. And pastor needs to remember that for himself, that if I'm driving, I might have to send her a message saying, I'll be a few minutes late. I'm helping somebody change a tire. Okay? Whatever that is, we need to look at that in our lives. But Jesus says something that's even harder, that we are called to love and forgive our enemies. And your enemies are your enemies. They're not frenemies, they're enemies, okay? And so for Jesus, what did that mean? Jesus was taken by his own people, betrayed, judged by the Romans, was taken by his own people, betrayed, judged by the Romans. Maybe they don't like Pentecostals, maybe they don't like old white guys, maybe, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever category that's the wrong category, and somebody is not happy, well, okay, so what? We are still called to love them, care for them, forgive them, because that's the Jesus way. The Jesus way is the way of the cross. And so he said, if you want to follow me, you pick up your cross and you follow me. And so that's not an easy thing. We know that even Jesus was not able to carry his cross all the way, but needed help in doing that. But when he was hanging on the cross, he prayed for them. Maybe you're saying, Pastor, the abuse that I suffered was so bad, I'm traumatized and still am traumatized. And I'd say, well, how can I help you with your trauma? How can I help you get beyond that trauma? How can I help you to healing and wholeness. But part of that process is going to be somewhere along the line, letting go. Otherwise, it will eat you alive forever. It becomes your master, and you become the slave to that. So I'm not demeaning anyone's suffering or anyone who's been a victim. That's real, and that is unjust. It's unfair. It's not right. You shouldn't have had to go through it. And the good news is Jesus can bring healing to your life, which means also at some point in time that the perpetrator is no longer going to haunt your dreams. That's good news. But that comes the Jesus way. Father, forgive them. Wow. Wow. So if you say that's a miracle, I don't know how to do it, and then Jesus said, well, it's okay. I'll teach you how to pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And he taught us to pray. And as we looked at that prayer, we saw that there were the prayers and the blessings for God. May his name be hallowed. May he be glorified. May his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Those are prayers for God. Those are blessings for God that we are giving him. We are making statements about this king, this one who rules, and we're saying, let it be that way. And then, after we've done that, we get to, and give us today our daily bread. What do I need today? Forgive my sins as I forgive others. And lead me not into temptation, but deliver me from the evil. And lead but the evil one. Those are all practical things for our lives. And so when we get to a place where we don't know how to handle all of this, he has taught us to pray. And if at any time you are feeling stuck in your prayer and you don't know what to say, open it to that chapter and take a look at that prayer, and maybe all the words that you're trying to think, how do I say it? I don't know what to pray. Just pray that. And the Spirit of God, who is within us, who knows how to pray beyond what we know how to pray, he is able to pray and to touch God on our behalf. So Jesus taught us to pray, and we can follow that. We've seen many other topics as we've gone through. Where's your treasure? Is your treasure in your bank account? Is your treasure in your house? Where's your treasure? Because where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. And so we need to have real, valuable things as our treasure. Now, as we've get together as a church here, this is a gathering of imperfect people. And as I get to know you, I find out more about your imperfection, and you find out more about mine. And that's okay, because we're people. And we are people on a journey together. And those imperfections, well, that's where we talk to God, and that's where we grow, that's where we improve, that's where we see the Spirit move in our lives, and we can rejoice together that as I see you grow and as you see me grow, that we can actually say, God is actually at work doing stuff here. And if we were all perfect to begin with, well, what a boring place it would be, right? But no, we are growing together, and so we don't judge one another. There is one, as you see me grow, that we can ever know. And so God is ever known. And so God is that one. Our lives are never simple. And it's not like you get the one answer and you've got it all figured out and everything is going to go good for the rest of your lives. So I went to church as a kid. I walked to church on my own. My parents didn't take me. I walked to church. One of my uncles, who was only a few years older than me, had a really cool suit. And when he got too big for it and I got big enough for it, I got a hand-me-down suit. And I was the school kid with a suit, and I walked to Sunday school with my suit. I got involved in church activities as a kid. I went to my confirmation classes. I was confirmed, and the bishop laid hands on me. I went to visit my grandparents, who my grandfather just loved on me and told me about Jesus in ways that I hadn't heard before. And so I made that full confession. Not that God wasn't at work before, but somewhere along the line I needed to say, I'm all in. And I said at 14, going on 15, I'm all in. And you're 14-year-old, what do you know? I knew nothing about life, right? I was a 14-year-old kid. But I was all in, whatever that meant. And so my life has been an interesting journey of what does all in look like. And my all in will look different than your all in. And I've stumbled along the way, and God has had to lift me up, brush me off, clean me up, and fix me, because I'm like you. I'm an ordinary person trying to follow an extraordinary God. And so we have this journey that we've been called to live together. And in those moments, there are times when it's like Jesus said, listen, if you need something, ask, seek, and knock. Okay? We don't make him upset when we ask him for something. In fact, it's Father's Day, right? People ask, kids ask, what can I give you for Father's Day? I really don't want, other than the steak. But yeah, I really don't have a whole pile of things that I want. But I want my kids to be healthy and safe and well-adjusted. And so my youngest daughter came yesterday to spend the day with her mom, not me. We're going to do the father-daughter thing on Thursday this week. We're going to a rehearsal at the Shaw Festival. I get to go to actual rehearsals and not just the plays. And so we're going to a rehearsal together. She loves the theater. And then we're going to go out for treat afterwards. And she's going to do the Father's Day thing there. But yesterday was kind of like the real Father's Day. What is it? Well, she's been having trouble with her car. So I got one of those code readers, that you plug into the little computer in the car. I got the app on my phone. I paid the money because I knew she was having problems. And, okay, let's plug it in and find out what's wrong with your car so that this week you can go to a garage and you don't look stupid by, asking for the wrong thing, and they're not going to rip you off because you know what the code is and you know what that means. And what? I'm being a dad. Okay? Yeah. Those kinds of things, that doesn't go away. It doesn't go away when they grow up. We are always their dads. And guess what? If that gives me pleasure to do something for my daughter, imagine God, who made you. You are the workmanship of his creation. You are special, and he made you. And when you have a need, you think he's sitting in heaven saying, yeah, not this week. You really don't deserve it. Yeah, you weren't so good this week. He is our heavenly Father who loves us beyond we can imagine. And he is looking for those moments when we ask him for help so he can say yes. He wants to say yes. I got a little video this morning from my oldest son, the one who lives in Switzerland. Showed me a little video. They're sitting outside. It's thunder, lightning, hailstorm, and all the rest of that. And, oh, by the way, happy Father's Day. And he found out that his dad wrote a book. So I have a book. You can get it on Amazon. It's not a churchy book. It is How to Parent Adult Children. I have 4 adult children. I have adult grandchildren. Okay, so obviously I'm getting older as the time goes on. And so my son said, Dad, you know, it'd be really cool if you could get me that book. Why? Because he has a daughter graduating university next week, and he's becoming one of those parents of adult children and realized that maybe his old man might have learned a trick or two that would be helpful for him to learn, and away you go. And I'm just smiling to myself and saying, yeah, we got off to a rough start. I was a dad who tried way too hard when my kids were small. And I've learned a few lessons along the way, so hopefully he will be able to use them. All of that to say, we get to this place, and Jesus, as we saw last week, said, you have a choice. You can pick the narrow gate, or you can pick the wide gate. This is not about going to heaven. This is about how you live. And picking the narrow gate means sometimes it's going to be hard. We're going to have to do things that are not easy for ourselves. We're going to have to take a direction that maybe we wouldn't have chosen on our own. But he's asking us to follow him through that narrow gate and not just go with the crowd. That doesn't mean our life's focus is against the crowd, because we're salt and light to that crowd. But how can we be salt and light if we're not going in a direction that leads to the light? And so he has called us to live that life and to pick the hard way rather than the easy way. So, that's my introduction to today's message. Okay. Now you're nervous, right? The pastor's going to go for another half hour. The food in the kitchen's going to burn downstairs. My stomach is rumbling so loud they can hear it up front. No. Today's message is very simple. I read the text to you. And Jesus said, the wise builder actually does what I've been teaching you. So my journey through all of those points that we've been working on together for the last 4 months is a journey to help remind us what is the teaching that Jesus wants us to do. It's easy to say, the wise person puts into practice my teaching, and then you never get specific about it. You just say, yeah, you got to follow Jesus' teaching, whatever that was. You just say, yeah, whatever that was, I don't know, but it sounded religious. No. That's why we made that journey through all of those points again, so that this morning, or now this afternoon, as we conclude our service, I want each of us to say yes to Jesus. Not to me. Yes to Jesus. That yes, I choose your way. I choose the Jesus way and not the easy way. Help me to live that way. And at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, that little statement written by the author of the book. It's not Jesus' words now. And he said, the crowds were amazed at Jesus' teaching because he spoke as one who had authority and not like their religious leaders. What does that mean? Well, when you study things in the Jewish context, and it's pretty amazing, they have kept over 4,000 years, the wisdom of 4,000 years. We have a hard time as Pentecostals even keeping the wisdom from the last 100 years. Like if I asked you the names of the Pentecostals who actually started the leadership of the Pentecostal movement in Canada 100 years ago, you wouldn't know their names, probably. If you did, you get an extra star in your crown in heaven. Okay? But we're not good at that. But Jews are very good at that. And so when you're studying something, you're able to look at what did the rabbis say. And even in Jesus' day, already in Jesus' day, where they had been around for 1,500 years as a religious group after Moses, or over 2,000 years from the time of Abraham, they had still not only the written wisdom of the Word, they had collective wisdom and whatnot from all of their scholars, and they knew that. And so when their rabbis were doing teaching, they would say, well, you know, Rabbi so-and-so said, but Rabbi such and such said something different, and they're always quoting this collective wisdom, even when it's not right. But they're quoting it. They're aware of it. Jesus didn't do that. He quotes the Word. And then he tells you, you've heard it said, but I tell you. Murder, wrong. But hatred, I tell you, is wrong. Adultery is wrong. But lust after someone else is wrong. I tell you. And so he spoke with an authority that they were not used to getting because they had never met someone like Jesus before. And so when we are considering the lessons that we have learned over the past 4 months, remember, these lessons are not from David Boyd. These lessons are from Jesus. And he has the authority to set the bar wherever he wants to set it. And we are challenged to meet that in our day-to-day lives. Amen? So let's pray. Lord, I want to thank you for this amazing message that you preached in the mountains of the Galilee, overlooking the Kinneret. Thousands of people who came to hear your teaching. But not only then, that your words have been put down in a book and made available to millions and billions of people. That today we might hear your voice as it was echoing off the hills of Galilee, speaking to the hearts of men and women. Lord, may your words speak to our hearts. Where we are weak and failing, may it point that out, but also point to the hope and the help that we need. Lord, in the areas where we're doing well, may we rejoice in it, but put our trust in you and not in our own strength. Lord, where we need help, help us to not be so proud that we can't ask you for help. You are our Father, and you love to be asked for help. And so I pray for my brothers and sisters that are here today, Lord, that each person in this room will say yes to the Jesus way. And Lord, that as we follow you, that we will be wise builders, not just of physical homes, but of spiritual homes, spiritual church, spiritual communities, spiritual neighborhoods. In all of these church, spiritual communities, spiritual neighborhoods, in all of these things that we, as we follow you and put, that we'll ask for your help, and you will give it to us. And so I praise you right now for all the good that you've been doing, but will continue to do in our hearts and in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. So please, enjoy the potluck dinner together.